Abby, did you hear that Zach Edey hurt his ankle again?
Yeah.
What are the Grizzlies going to do about that? Do you know anything about being clutch or being lucky in basketball?
No.
Okay. Do you know anything about clutch at all? You just know that your daddy's clutch, right?
Yeah.
All right. You ready to say it?
Yeah.
It's a special Monday. Let's
in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It's a special Monday episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Thanks for indulging me. Thanks for welcoming sweet Abby to the start of the show. She always likes to hop on the podcast every once in a while. She's an everydayer, just like you guys are. Actually, probably not, but that's okay. Shout out to my daughter, Abby, and shout out to you for being with me on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Got to start off on a light note this week. Already some injury news shaking things up for the Memphis Grizzlies. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts as proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe, wherever it is that you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, YouTube. It is literally all good. Make sure you are making us a part of your NBA and Memphis Grizzlies content consumption each and every time that an episode drops. Tough start to the weekend. Yeah, I was not super stoked to see the news come out about one Zach Edey not being able to have a normal offseason, right? That's a major disappointment, a really big deal for this Grizzlies team. So much of what we've been sold on the Tuomas Isalo experience has to do with what a good screen setting, legitimate big man can bring to the table. And now the Memphis Grizzlies are not going to get that experience anytime soon because this is not your everyday ankle sprain, right? Edey is expected to miss the start of this coming season due to surgery on this ankle. And this is from the Grizzlies themselves, their PR media release. During an off-season training session this week, Edey re-sprained his left ankle. It's important to remember, a little context here, timeout, little context. Edey has sprained this ankle a couple of different times throughout his career, and especially in the last year or so here with Memphis. One of the reasons his summer league was shortened last year in his rookie campaign. Imaging revealed excessive ligamentous laxity, which will require Edey to undergo surgery to address the laxity and restabilize his ankle. So essentially his sprain is so severe that the tendon or the actual ligaments may have ripped from the ankle bone itself. Now that's speculation. I want to stress that. Maybe you're a doctor. In the comments, you can hit me up on X as well at Joe Mullinax. Let me know how you're feeling about this. My understanding is they are going to have to go in and either tighten these ligaments, reattach them, some sort of situation that surgery is needed for a really badly sprained ankle. I had not heard of that before, but when it's a recurring issue, maybe they're just trying to nip it in the bud right now. Preliminary timeline will be provided following surgery. Edey is expected to make a full recovery, and this is from a piece by the Daily Memphian's Chris Harrington. Edey's agent, Mark Bartelstein of Primary Sports, elaborated to Shams Charania. After consulting with the Grizzlies and multiple specialists, we decided this is the best approach for Zach long-term. As it gets him back to 100% with no limitations, we'll make a full recovery and be back better than ever. Again, he has sprained this ankle multiple times since becoming a member of the Grizzlies. They have decided to have surgery on this ankle. Later on in the show, we're going to talk about trying to replace Zach Edey. And you're probably sitting there thinking, you big dumb dummy, Joe, not talking about my daughter, of course, she's wonderful. But you big dumb dummy, Joe Mullinax, you're not able to replace the 7'4", 290-pound Zach Edey. One of the points of Edey's strengths on this Grizzlies roster is what he brings to the table is so unique. And there might be some options in free agency and the draft that maybe we can discuss. But the fact of the matter is this: without Zach Edey in the fold, at least to start the season, this Grizzlies team is going to look vastly different. It impacts Jaren Jackson Jr. and John Morant first and foremost. And that's one of the most difficult things about this injury is your two biggest stars are arguably the two that get hit the hardest by Edey not being able to play. In the case of Jaren, it's fairly simple. If you can't find a center replacement, whether it's on the roster or off of it, then you're going to have Jaren play a lot more 5 spot, a lot more center than you would like for him to do. He is much better as a 4. We have seen that consistently throughout his career. Yes, there are flashes of brilliance when he plays the 5, but he's not able to be the weak side help defender that you like. He's not able to be the rebounder that everybody would like for him to be better at. While Jaren, in a perfect world, is a center, power forward is where he shines brightest. And then John Morant, who is so dependent on those Zach Edey screens. We talked about it numerous times here on Locked On Grizzlies. The best John Morant that we have ever seen comes with Jonas Valanciunas and especially Steven Adams. Hold that thought on old Steven Adams on the court. When those bigs played alongside Ja, that he was able to get screens set for him. He was able to play with space and close that space with his elite athleticism, his nifty handle, all the things that make Ja Morant are amplified when a true big man that can set good screens is there on the court with him in the pick and roll. That's obviously gone in the here and now. It's not all doom and gloom. That's important to point out. We'll talk about outside replacements for the big main, Zach Edey, later on in the show, but Brandon Clarke still exists on the roster. And if anything, I do think that it makes it more likely that Brandon Clarke, as he gets healthier, he's not expected to miss any of the regular season. He did not have to have surgery on his knee. The expectation for Brandon is he'll be good to go come training camp early fall. And when that hits, Brandon Clarke being on the roster, although he is not 7'4", ironically, he's 8 inches shorter than Zach Edey, roughly. Clarke has the leap ability. Clarke has the lateral movement defensively, and Clarke also has the capacity to move and switch and be a wonderful front court partner with Jaren, just in a very different way. That Clarke being there will help negate, at least for Jaren, some of the impact of this Edey absence. Now, the rebounding remains a concern. That's not Brandon Clarke's elite space either. He's better at it than Jaren, but not by much. But you have that defensive malleability with Clarke that still amplifies what Jaren can do as a defender, that if Clarke is healthy, and that's a big if, similar injury to what Steven Adams had when Adams was here, but not the same body type, obviously, not the same injury, actually. Same injury, but different, if that makes sense. Clarke will hopefully be ready to go. And I also think that it makes re-signing Santi Aldama, who has been in the news as a rumored target of the Detroit Pistons. We're not talking about that at length on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. DeMichael can later on in the week if he wants. But I'm not going to cover it extensively because it's kind of like saying the Grizzlies want Kevin Durant, to be honest with you. Yeah, the Detroit Pistons should want Santi Aldama. He fixed some problems for them. Are they going to overpay Santi Aldama? Probably not. Maybe so, I guess. But the fact remains that Santi Aldama is a restricted free agent, and until an offer is made on Santi, the Grizzlies have first opportunity to re-sign that guy. And Santi at 6'11", again, not a traditional center, not a traditional big, but he's another big man who can help fill some of that void. So is it possible to replace the 7'4", 290-pound guy? I guess we're about to find out, right? Unlikely that the Grizzlies are able to do so. But you can try to recreate him in the aggregate in a variety of ways, and you certainly can put bodies on the floor to help fill that void to an extent. I think Brandon Clarke becomes that much more important. Any and all trade machine fun can probably be put to the side for now. But I also think that it makes Santi Aldama's return important too. And it means that the Grizzlies might have to play a little bit differently than perhaps Tuomas Isolo wanted to begin the season. Because again, you watch his Paris basketball teams. Quick, athletic point guards having screens set by bigs. That is the fulcrum point for his offense. John Morant theoretically will be there, but the 7'4", 290-pound Edey will not, at least not to start the season. And it's a bummer because he has to focus on rehab now instead of growing his game. So get well, Zach. Obviously not the news that the Grizzlies and their fans wanted over the weekend, but No use crying over spilled milk, right? Feeling sorry for yourself isn't going to fix anything. How can the Grizzlies try to address this problem outside of the Brandon Clarks and Santi Aldamas of the world? We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Grizzlies. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's pretty easy to lose track. I know I'm guilty of that. That's where Monarch Money comes in. They are your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. You don't have to juggle multiple apps once you log on and sign up for Monarch. They can help you check your finances, track spending, and even plan out long-term goals. And my wife's a big fan of Monarch Money. Managing money with my partner is smoother than ever. I can track shared and personal accounts with her, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Good stuff. Check out Monarch Money today if you haven't already done so. What are you waiting for? Go do it. So Zach Edey is out, right? Bye-bye Zach Edey for now, and that's a bummer. But the reality of the situation is there are options, whether it's Brandon Clark, Santi Aldama on the roster, or whether there's guys off the roster currently. And I got to be honest with you, it's kind of similar to what DeMichael and I have talked about on past episodes of the show in terms of this draft. Memphis unlikely to trade up. There are players in and around the second round that could theoretically be fits in terms of replacement centers. But how much do they actually move the needle in terms of being an Edey replacement? I think that's a fair question to ask. You have guys like Ryan Kalkbrenner, right, of Creighton. That would be a trade-up kind of target, moving up in the second round. Doesn't solve a bunch of your rebounding issues, but he certainly is a floor spacer. He can do some things as a bigger body, as a screener. I think he could help you there out of Creighton. But again, we're talking about Vladislav Golden of Michigan, 24-year-old center, 47th on Tankathon's big board. This is a guy that can rebound a little bit, but aside from being 7'1" and a quarter, how much is he actually helping the Grizzlies in terms of what ails them? Having a big that can be elite as a rebounder, that can also screen and do the things as an elite role player, as DeMichael, my wonderful co-host, likes to say. Without Edey, it's impossible to say we're going to replace him. There is no 7'4", 290-pound guy in this class, and there's not really a 7'4", 290-pound guy in free agency either. But I do believe that free agency is the better path for the Grizzlies if they are going to try to find a replacement. And we're going to start with, hilariously, someone who's going to be a free agent coming out of Houston, Steven Adams. Now, I know what you're thinking. If you are a fan of the Memphis Grizzlies, you've checked out this show before, you know that the Adams-Memphis era ended pretty poorly, right? There were questions about his recovery from his PCL injury and his knee. What were the Grizzlies going to do? What should he do? Should he get surgery? Should he try to rehab it? He even played some preseason games, and then they shut him down for the season. It was very confusing. So would there even be a lane for a return for Steven Adams? I hope so, because to be honest with you, if you are looking for a backup to Zach Edey, who does things similar to Zach Edey and truthfully does them better than Edey in some ways, even at this stage of their careers, it's Steven Adams. Now, the Rockets probably value Adams too much to let him walk. I could see him returning to Houston pretty easily, especially if Ime Udoka stays there. It seems like Steve-O has found a good groove and maybe a spot to finish his career with the Rockets. But this is a new Grizzlies coaching staff, and again, the priority on screening, the strength that Adams brings to the rebounding side of things, especially offensive rebounding, helping to negate the flaws of Jaren. If we're trying to amplify the best two Grizzlies players in Ja and Jaren, we know Steven Adams can do those things. We know that he can amplify their skill sets. So I would call Steven Adams. I would kick those tires as somebody that could theoretically fill in for Edey in the short term, and in the long term, be a good backup, be a good fifth big if you want to lean on Santi and Clark beyond Edey and Jaren. Another name that's intriguing, somebody that, because of a possible tank year coming up for Boston, all the different money that is tied up in other spaces with the Celtics. Obviously, Jason Tatum's terrible injury to his Achilles. Boston's not going to be able to pay all these guys. Luke Kornet, if you watch the Boston Celtics this season, a really impressive player, 6 points a game, 5 rebounds, 1.6 assists. He's bouncy. He's got some good athleticism to him. He's also a longer defender. He can finish. He has good impact in terms of being a rim protector. Luke Kornet is a sneaky guy that if Memphis, again, maybe they move on from Santi and they put that money in a different space with Luke Kornet being in that mix. I could see Luke Kornet being a possible name that comes up in rumors, seeing as how Boston is not going to be able to pay all those dudes. They're trying to trade Kristaps Porzingis. Now, if they do trade Porzingis, maybe they try to bring in Kornet as a cheaper option to be a starter for them. But depending on how Boston offloads salary, that is going to be fascinating to watch. Another guy towards the end of his career, not Luke Kornet. Kornet's still pretty young, but similar to Steven Adams is Brook Lopez. And what comes of Milwaukee, right? The latest rumors coming out of the Bucks camp and Giannis's camp is that Giannis is thinking he's going to stay in Milwaukee. He's going to stay a Buck. And if that's his choice, so be it. But what if Giannis decides to leave? What if he changes his mind? Does that lead to a fire sale in terms of the Bucks not bringing guys back? And if that does indeed happen, then Brook Lopez could be available, and maybe for cheaper than he should be available for. And Brook Lopez is not the rebounder that, to be honest, even Edey is, or Steven Adams is, or, truthfully, Jaren Jackson Jr. is. So he's not being a perfect fit in terms of replacing Edey. Again, outside of Steven Adams, there may not be a replacement for Zach Edey in terms of exactly what the Grizzlies were hoping to get out of that position. But Lopez can space the floor. Lopez can be a decent rim protector. He's obviously lost a step. But if you ask him to do specific things as a screener, a pick and popper, it would allow for Jaren to have some more room to operate in his isolation scoring, trying to get downhill to the basket. The additional pass off of a job Brook Lopez screen to Jaren out on the elbow. Let him go to work. I think that could possibly be a fit. But again, I want to stress, Steven Adams, he actually has the skill set. Steven Adams is elite at being big. Steven Adams is a phenomenal rebounder, especially offensive rebounder. Steven Adams allows for Jaren Jackson Jr. and Joe Morant to really thrive in their ideal roles. But when you invest the number 9 overall pick in a player, you're expecting that guy to be, at the very least, as DeMichael, my co-host, likes to put it, an elite role player. And that's what Edey is on pace to be. If you expect Zach Edey to be some superstar, if you expect him to become a 20-point, 10-rebound guy night in and night out, you're going to be disappointed. I don't think that's Zach Edey's NBA ceiling. But that doesn't mean that Zach Edey can't be a really good version of Steven Adams. And guess what? Steven Adams was also a lottery pick. And guess what? Steven Adams is not an elite scorer. But what Adams can do is help teams win because of all the things that he does well that don't involve scoring the basketball. That's what Edey is, and can continue to grow as an offensive player to make him better than Steve-O down the road. But in the short term, there's a Steven Adams right there who might be available. Maybe you can pry a Luke Kornet, who's kind of more like Brandon Clark than he is Zach Edey. But again, he's a bigger body that can eat those minutes. Maybe you bring in Brook Lopez and give him an opportunity to start. Maybe that's how you sell it to him. We see what the time frame is after Edey's surgery. If it's 6 months and we're not seeing Edey until Christmas, well, Brook Lopez can start 25 or some games. Is he going to get that opportunity anywhere else in the NBA? Maybe not. So there's different angles that the Grizzlies can take with this. If they want to try to keep it as close to the Edey experience as possible, maybe they make a really big push for Adams. If they want to lean into that versatility of Brandon Clark, maybe they go and they bring in a Luke Kornet. And maybe that does move on from Santi or Clark himself. But how they perceive this and how they angle this moving forward is going to really be fascinating to watch unfold. How do they perceive this offense without Zach Edey as that initiator, at least in terms of screening, to start the season? Let me know on X. Hit me up in the comments. How are you feeling about an Edey replacement? Is it possible to replace Edey? Maybe it's a foolish thing to even try to do. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to close out this episode of the show talking about Tyrese Halliburton and the clutch versus luck discussion. Stick around here on Locked On Grizzlies. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by DoorDash. I love DoorDash. I know you do too. And the amazing thing, NBA fans, is playoff season and NBA final season means big performances and bigger rewards. DoorDash is bringing the heat with a slam dunk deal for DashPass members during the 2025 NBA playoffs. It's called They Swoosh, You Score. Anytime a player drops 50 or more points in a playoff game, DashPass members score a free 3-piece crispy tenders combo from Wingstop the very next day. Place an order of $20 or more. Use the code Wingstop50 at checkout, and that combo is yours. It's crispy, and delicious, and totally free. The offer is valid from noon to midnight the day after the game. Again, sign up for DashPass, unlock this and more exclusive deals all season long. And when any player scores 50 or more points in a playoff game, DashPass members can grab a free 3-piece crispy tenders combo from Wingstop the next day with a $20 or more order and code Wingstop50. That's DashPass. Your door to more savings, more flavor, and more ways to win. Of course, terms apply. Go check them out today. So Tyrese Halliburton and the Indiana Pacers were the talk of the NBA and sports world coming out of Game 1 of the NBA Finals. The amazing run that the Pacers and Halliburton have been on this offseason. Halliburton having 4 shots with like 5 seconds or less to tie or win the game for his team. Literally doing it in every series that the Pacers have been a part of, right? From the Bucks to the Knicks, all the different teams that the Pacers have interacted with, the Cavs, and now the Thunder have seen Tyrese Halliburton in this Pacers team. The Pacers were down by 15 to the Oklahoma City Thunder. 15 points with about 10 minutes left in Game 1. And the Pacers were able to make a staggering comeback. Now, if you look at Tyrese Halliburton's stats, they were not otherworldly. The Thunder did a pretty good job until the end of the game defending Halliburton. So how do the Pacers get it done? They do it as a team. They do it as a team. And that is where I land on the clutch versus luck situation. I'm a big believer, as Rudy Gay once said over a decade ago now in Memphis, you make your own luck. And the Grizzlies absolutely used to believe that in the grit and grind era. Nobody was giving any handouts to the Memphis Grizzlies. Nothing easy came to them. They made their own luck. And I think that the Indiana Pacers, to their credit, and again, if you're an everydayer, you know I have no love lost for Tyrese Halliburton aside from his love of professional wrestling. But there is real clutch performances happening. There are real clutch performances happening with this Pacers team because it's not just Halliburton. If it was Halliburton launching these shots that bounce off the heel of the rim and fall straight down, well, then, yeah, we could talk a little bit more about luck. But it's Aaron Nesmith hitting big threes. It's Miles Turner being one of the best players on the court, as I said he would have to be in order for the Pacers to compete. That's exactly what's transpiring. It is the play of Andrew Nembhard as a defender on SGA and other Thunder players. It allows for Halliburton to have the opportunity to be able to say, look at how lucky this guy is hitting these shots. It's not luck. He has confidence in what he's doing. He has a coach who has complete and total confidence in how he is executing. What a phenomenal coaching job that is being done in Indiana. The pacing of these Pacers, pun intended, the way that they're able to run with intent. It's intentful, purposeful execution of offense in this way. It's not just running for the sake of running. And they're so much fun to watch, and they put so much pressure on opposing defenses. And when you're able to do that, it puts you in a position to get on runs late in games. And when you have that capacity to have a superstar that can finish it, while there are elite role players around him helping him get to that spot to have that opportunity, it's not luck. It's absolutely clutch. And it's a team that believes and understands that there are 48 minutes in a basketball game. That's one of the hardest things for people to understand, whether you are a novice to sports or whether you watch them every day and you've studied them all your life, everything in between. This idea of luck, we're not there in practice gyms watching Tyrese Halliburton shoot that exact shot that he took against the Oklahoma City Thunder. We're not there Watching Joe Morant make the move that he made in his return game a couple of years ago against the New Orleans Pelicans to win that contest. We don't see Jaren Jackson Jr. shooting threes except for when he beats the Lakers to do it, like from a few years ago. These guys shoot thousands of shots, have probably taken tens and hundreds of thousands of shots in their careers, depending on how long they played basketball. And you are watching the fruit of that labor. They believe they can make it because they've seen it go in tens of thousands of times. And sure, it didn't happen at the end of game 1 of the NBA Finals before, but these are professional athletes. These are the top of their profession. Who cares about the ratings? That's the NBA's fault. That's the worst commissioner in professional sports, Adam Silver's fault. That's not the Pacers' fault. That's not the Thunder's fault. It was a heck of a basketball game in game 1. The Pacers' first lead was with 0.3 seconds left. They won a game that the Thunder led 99% of. There's no luck there. Partially because we've seen it happen numerous times with this Pacers team, but it's also because they have a game plan. Rick Barnes has a game plan. Tyrese Halliburton has a game plan. He has spent his entire life leading up to these moments and these opportunities. And sometimes you miss. Sometimes you fail. Sometimes you fall. But that doesn't mean that you didn't prepare for the opportunity when it came across. And when the ball does bounce your way, it's not luck. Preparation met opportunity. You fall to the level of your training in those most critical moments. And I think Tyrese Halliburton, who was voted in the Athletics anonymous player survey, if you remember correctly, as the most overrated player in the NBA. Perhaps Halliburton's the most underrated because he has shown that the level of his training is elite. He is a phenomenal basketball player. And again, pains me to say that. For those of you that have followed my career, not like I'm going to go to bat for Tyrese Halliburton most times, but he's clutch. And he rises to the moment because of the players and coaches around him and because of the work that he put in to get himself in that position to answer those opportunities. So the NBA Finals are ongoing, of course. Lots of fun. I really enjoyed game 1. And again, who cares about ratings? I certainly don't. The NBA needs to market the actual games better. Heaven forbid you not focus on Luka Doncic being traded as much as you do. Heaven forbid you stop talking about these coastal cities because the weather's nice and that's where these players want to go. Oh, they love the nightlife there. It's a basketball game. Let's talk about the game of basketball because a pretty damn good game broke out in game 1. And people weren't talking about that consistently enough because of all the other things that the NBA invested in. You know whose fault that is? Adam Silver, the worst commissioner in professional sports. Thank you for being with me on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. It is much appreciated. And thank you for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen. Now for your second listen today, go check out Locked On NBA Big Board Show. NBA draft expert Rafael Barlow will react to every workout, interview, and rumor leading up to the NBA draft. Maybe we need to get Barlow on to see if we can find an Edey replacement late in the second round. Find Locked On NBA Big Board on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm out for the next couple of days here on Locked On Grizzlies. Got a work trip that I'm heading on, but to Michael Cole, my wonderful co-host, Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee, we'll be with you talking about the NBA Finals, I'm sure, Santi Aldama, Detroit Pistons rumors, the ratings, all sorts of different things to talk about over these next couple of days with me gone. I'm sure you will all miss me terribly. I will be back on our Thursday episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Looking forward to being back with you then. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing wherever you get podcasts. We are proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, Google. It is all good. Make the Michael and I part of your NBA and Memphis Grizzlies content consumption each and every time that an episode drops. Become an everydayer. If you're already an everydayer, thank you so much for being one. It is truly appreciated. DeMichael and I are so happy with how the podcast has grown. We are growing by leaps and bounds every year that we're together. And we know that the next coming year is going to be even better as we grind through this offseason. Lots of stuff picking up here in the next couple of weeks. We will be your spot for Grizzlies content discussion. Make sure you're sticking with us and becoming an everydayer if you're not already here on Locked On Grizzlies. Again, we'll catch you next time here on the podcast. Michael's got you the next couple of days. Make sure you're with us. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. Until next time, see you.